Hi there folks, I hope you're all safe. So this video will be how to make a tikka masala, Seitan Tikka Masala, but it could be chicken tikka masala, it could be whatever type of tikka masala you like. But obviously we try to tend for close to vegan. There's a little bit of yogurt in here, so it's not entirely vegan, but it's almost there. But this is a lovely curry. It's one of my favourites for the various curries I make. I've already shown you how to make tikka paste in another video. I'm not sure if it will drop before or drop after this, but there will be a video to show you how to make your own tikka paste if you don't want to use jarred stuff. Making your own is far nicer, so much more oomph to the paste, which gives a bigger oomph to the whole curry. So it's your choice which way you want to go, either use jarred or make your own tikka paste. Unfortunately, this video is going to have a few different edits spliced together because I messed up making the video the first time and lost some footage, then messed up again and lost some other footage. So I think it's actually 3 different times I filmed this now, spliced it all together, and we've got a working video showing you how to make the actual curry. So let's crack on, let's do this, and you folks stay safe out there.
The first thing we're going to need to prepare is some of my spiced seitan, which is my go-to recipe, which you'll see in my other bookmarks on YouTube. We're going to look for 400 to 425 grams of that, and we're going to chop it into reasonably good bite-sized pieces. To that, we're going to add 45 millimeters or 3 tablespoons of tikka paste. You can either use jarred tikka paste or you can use the stuff that I'll also show you how to make in a separate video. If you're making your own, it is far nicer than jarred tikka paste. But again, it's more effort, so balance where you want to be with it. And to the same bowl that has our tikka paste and seitan in it, we are going to add 60 millimeters, 4 tablespoons or a 1/4 cup of plain natural yogurt, and give it a really good mix together. And once fully mixed, we're going to set this aside until it's required, put a lid on it, put a cover over the top of it, whack it in your fridge until you need it. This can be prepared hours in advance of actually requiring it. Next up, we need to prepare our onion. Now we can either use 1 Cannonball onion or we can use 2 large onions, just depends on what you can get your hands on. Cannonball onions, again, I've said many videos before, I'm not sure if that's actually what they're really called. I will need to look that up one day, but it's what my supermarket calls the really huge Cannonball-like onions that they sell. Otherwise, 2 large brown onions. Take the top off as normal with an onion, de-skin it, or half it, then de-skin it, and then we're going to roughly chop it. We don't need really fine chopping here because we're going to be blending this later on, so rough chopping is absolutely fine. And as I've said in other videos, I'm treating all my videos as if it's a brand new beginner. Someone's came here and they don't know what they're doing, so there's bits that if you're an experienced chef, experienced cook, you can move forward on. But to chop your onion, you're going to cut towards the root section without cutting all the way through. You're then going to turn and cut 90 degrees to that, as you've just saw in the video, and that will give you your rough chops. Closer cuts will give you finer chops, just depending on what you're looking for. So chop towards the root end, but not all the way through, as we see here. Then we're turning 90 degrees and we're going to chop down vertically, and that's how we chop an onion. And again, we're going to set these aside until they're required, so just scrape them off into a bowl and cover them with whatever you've got handy, a towel, bit of kitchen paper, whatever works for you. It's just to protect your eyes from the fumes coming off the onions, especially as we're not using them immediately. When it comes to our garlic, we do have options. We can use fresh, which is always better. It is more flavoursome to use fresh ingredients over frozen, but sometimes needs must, so I'm demonstrating with frozen. Now, with the garlic, the frozen stuff either comes crushed and chopped up already, or it comes in cloves that have been de-skinned like this already, and all you need to do is let your garlic defrost. If you're defrosting it, give it 30 minutes in a ramekin or 15 seconds in the same ramekin in the microwave, whichever one works best for you. To de-skin your garlic, take the flat of your blade, or if you're not comfortable with using your blade, some other heavy object, and press down onto the garlic, and that will separate the skin from the fresh garlic. If we continue to use the frozen, chop it, or the fresh, whichever one we're using, chop it, Doesn't need to be, again, really fine. It doesn't need to be entirely minced, because again, this will get blended. So chop up your garlic and stick it in a ramekin and set aside until required. Or alternatively, if it helps you prepare more easily, add the garlic direct to the same bowl as the onion, because they're both going to be cooked at the same time. Now, the amount of green chilli I'm talking here is for a very mild heat. If you do want it warmer, add more chilli to taste, but this adds a slight kick to it without it being overpowering. So we're talking a quarter block of frozen green chilli or one very small fresh green chilli. If you're using a fresh green chilli, make sure you take the seeds out, because they add a lot of heat, as does the little white bits in the inside, which I've gone and forgot what they're called, and I normally do. Now, whether it's fresh or frozen, we're going to set it aside and store it in a ramekin until we're ready to use it. If it's fresh, again, needs to chop it and then store it in the ramekin. We're not storing the whole chilli in it. And as with the garlic, just remember, fresh gives more of an oomph, more of a hit, more of a kick than frozen. But I'm showing you, you can make a lovely meal using frozen ingredients. Don't shy away from them just because they're frozen. They serve a purpose and you can still create a wonderful meal. And the same goes with our ginger. Higher kick off the fresh ginger, frozen ginger still serves its purpose. So we're looking for 1 inch of fresh root ginger, or we're looking for half a block of frozen ginger, or we're looking for 2 teaspoons of ginger paste. Now, you can leave these to defrost as well, but because they're such small quantities, as soon as they hit the pan, they'll be almost completely defrosted within 30 seconds to a minute, so it's not a big issue. You can either store them in the ramekin, or you can store them with your onions and your garlic. Depends again on the way you prefer to prepare. I generally just whack everything together. For sense of clarity on the video, I'm just making each thing separate. But if it's easier on you, keep everything in the bowl with the onions, because they're all going to be cooked at the same point anyway. That way, nothing's forgot when you add it to the pan when you need to. Now, we are going to need more tikka paste during the cooking phase, so we're going to add 3 tablespoons of tikka paste to a ramekin, and then we're going to set that aside. The tikka paste you see here is my own recipe, and it is definitely worth making your own tikka paste. There's just so much more flavour than the jarred stuff. And to a separate ramekin, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of tomato puree. And then 1 tablespoon of ground almonds to a separate ramekin, and once again set aside until required. And now measure out 1 cup, 250 millilitres of water, and set aside. Now that's a UK cup size. US cup sizes are different, and I can't remember in which direction. But it's 250 millilitres and set aside. And as I try to make my meals as close to being vegan as possible, we're using vegan butter in this. You could use dairy butter if you so wished, but we're using 45 grams, which is 3 tablespoons of butter. And again, set aside until required. To a deeper ramekin, we're going to be adding our double cream. Again, vegan if you've got it. 60 mils, 1/4 of a cup. And yet there was already cream in there to go and film it again because I'd forgot to record it, which was about the 4th time I've tried to do this one. And to a smaller ramekin, set aside 15 millilitres, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And rather than plain boiled rice, I go for seasoned rice. Now, the Schwartz seasoning you see here for pilau rice, it is really lovely. So for 3 people, it's 3 teaspoons to your rice, and we're talking 1 cup of rice. I've got another video where I teach you how to make perfect rice. If you're not so good on your rice, have a look at that video, but it's dead easy. But we'll be cooking this, but I'm not going to be going through the whole process on this one. And so we don't lose all that lovely sauce and flavour that we're putting around our seitan, we're going to line a grill pan with tin foil, just so that once we sit our skewers on it, we're not going to lose any of that flavour. Now, I use metal skewers, but wooden skewers you get less of a chance of burning yourself badly with. So use what you prefer. I use the metal ones because they last pretty much indefinitely. The wooden ones do have a shelf life, and trying to be conscious of making things last as long as possible, then I use metal. But use the skewers that you prefer. So just take them with your hand and slide them onto the skewers. And once we've got them all pressed up close to each other, we're going to then just sit them on our tinfoil lined grill pan. Now, it has been a messy process and we do have a reasonable amount of sauce left over. All we do is grab a spatula and try and evenly distribute that over the top of our seitan that's lying on the tin foil, because we don't want to waste any of our sauce. So just scrape it all out and add it to the seitan that's sitting there. And now we can actually start the cooking. So we're going to add 2 tablespoons of our vegetable cooking oil to either a sauteuse pan, preferably non-stick, or to a wok, depends on whatever you have at hand. We then want to bring that pan up to a medium-high heat whilst setting our grill to a medium setting. We don't want the grill on high, we want that on a medium heat setting. Now, our rice should also have been started by this point. As you can see, it's been covered before the onion goes in, so that's the sort of time frames we're taking, because it takes 25 minutes for your rice. So it should be on and cooking before the first bit of onion hits the pan. To check that your oil's at temperature, drop a couple of bits of onion into the oil. If the onion sizzles, it's at temperature and we can get the rest of the onion in there and start cooking. Now, stir it occasionally, especially at the start, to make sure the onion's well coated, and we're going to cook it at this medium-high heat for 5 minutes. We're looking for the onion, the garlic, the ginger and the chilli all to be well cooked, but the onion itself will start to take a light golden texture by the end of it. And whilst our onion is starting to cook, we stick our butter into the microwave, melt it, and then we're going to take a silicone brush and we're going to drizzle, without brushing, but actually just drizzle the butter over the top of our seitan, because we don't want to brush the sauce off of, but the butter is going to help this cook. So take the melted butter and, as you see, just drizzle it back and forward across. And then we're going to get that into the oven. And remember, medium heat here with the preheated grill, and we're going to cook it on this side for 7 minutes. You're going to see it sizzling away, looks gorgeous, smells gorgeous as it's cooking, but we stick it up to a high, you're going to char it too heavily, you're going to burn it. Medium heat's ideal here. And by the time we've done all this, our onion mix should be ready for our tikka paste, of which we're going to add 3 tablespoons of tikka paste. And oh my god, but be prepared for the smell as it wafts up and hits you here. It's already slightly fragrant with the ginger, with the garlic in there on top of the onion, but when the tikka paste hits the pan, it's gorgeous, and your house smells like this for days afterwards as well. It's a wonderful smell, it just permeates around everything. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. And the next thing we should be looking at is back down to the grill, but do not burn yourself if you're using metal skewers especially. They will scald you if you're not putting something on to protect your hands. Wooden ones are still going to be very hot, but you're definitely going to get burnt with metal ones, so make sure you get some form of glove on to protect yourself. Ideally, I should have been wearing silicone gloves here and not these ones, because if any of that liquid got through, I'd be getting burnt the next time I use these gloves. So be careful what you're doing here, but we want to turn them over. We then want to baste them with more of our butter. Again, just drizzle it over the top. Don't actually touch the surface of them if you can, just getting close, and then a few wee dabs of what's left over. I'm saying don't touch the surface. There, I've gone and done it. I really shouldn't have. And now that we're back in with the grill, hopefully the onions are ready for us to add the water, tomato puree, the ground almonds and the salt. We then want to bring this to a boil. Once it's at the boil, reduce the heat to medium and simmer for 15 minutes. Now, you don't need to do it often, but you do need to do it. Stir it as it cooks, every few minutes just to make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom of your pan. But it doesn't take a lot of work at this stage, but do keep it stirred occasionally. Now that the 15 minutes is over, you've got a couple of choices on how you would like to blend this. Now, either transfer it to a full-size blender, just be careful and not to spill it, and we're going to give it a blend in there. Now, this is a good option, or if you don't want to do it that way, you can also use a stick blender. Both options work, but one is better than the other, but one will create more cleanup for you, so it depends on the way you want to go. If you're using the full-size jug blender, you're going to get a much smoother sauce, but you're going to get a lot more cleanup. You use a stick blender, it's going to be a little bit more rustic, you're not going to get it just as smooth, and it's your choice what to do. Now, if you're using a stick blender and you've got a non-stick pan like you see here, make sure your stick blender has a plastic head, because you don't want metal scraping on your non-stick or you're going to kill it. Now, whichever method you've chosen, whether it be the jug blender, whether it be a stick blender, because of the nature of this recipe, you can prepare things in advance. So if you're preparing the sauce in advance, you can now store it in an enclosed container until it's required. I like using a casserole dish like this. It's just quick and easy and simple to get out. You can see one of the downsides of the jug blender here is getting all your sauce out of it without any wastage, but you can see how smooth and lovely it is. If you're using your sauce right away though, you don't need to store it. You can put it straight back in the pan that we were cooking from and then carry on with making your meal. But it's just a way of helping you prepare this, because there's a lot of moving parts. There's also a lot of cleanup with this particular recipe. With a lot of Indian recipes, there's a lot of cleanup because you're making a lot of components. So it's your choice. I do like to make my sauce ahead of schedule, set it aside, and then bring it back out and reheat it at the point required. But it's your choice and depends on the sort of time you've got. And by now, the second side of our seitan should also be ready. We're going to take it out of the grill. Some of the edges on some of the pieces should be charred. It shouldn't all be heavily charred, but there should be some slight charring sitting on the seitan. A lot of steam coming off it. Again, just be careful when you take these out. Don't burn yourselves on the metal skewers. It's an easy one to forget. It's an easy one to do. I've done it a couple of times myself out of sheer stupidity. Now, I mentioned at the start I've actually had to splice this together from a few different attempts of cooking this recipe because I keep losing footage. So this time round here, you can see I've used the stick blender rather than the jug full-size blender. It just depends on which way you want to go, but that particular recipe there, you see it's going to be a slightly more rustic to the sauce. I've no idea, we can't remember which bit of footage we got at the end. We're going to have a smooth one or we're going to have a slightly more rustic stick blended finished tikka sauce at the end. I don't know. I'll be as surprised as you. However, back to the job at hand, and we need to add our lemon juice and our cream. So in our already prepared ramekin, we have 15 ml, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, and separately we have 4 tablespoons, 1/4 of a cup, or 60 millimeters of double cream. And here again, we're using vegan cream. And once we have our lemon juice and our cream fully mixed into the sauce, we're going to add our seitan. Once all the seitan is added, we're going to cook on a medium-low heat for 5 minutes. However, if the sauce is a sauce that we had stored aside, make sure it's back at full heat before we add the lemon juice, the cream and the seitan. But cook for 5 minutes just to get the seitan and everything warmed through together. And once it's fully warmed through, we're just going to remove it from the heat and set aside ready for serving. And our rice should be ready at just about the exact same point. So we're going to take and we're going to serve out our rice, which you can see here is nice and fluffy. But with this Schwartz spice mix, you actually get a real heavy boost of flavour through it that's ridiculously complementary to tikka flavourings. And onto the better rice, you can then serve equal portions of the tikka masala. And lastly, to garnish, we can add about 1/2 tablespoon of yoghurt, some dried leaf coriander and some cumin seed to taste and then enjoy. This is simply delightful. It's delectable, it's gorgeous, it's yummy. It's one of my favourite curries to make. Got loads of different ones to make, but this is one of my favourites, so do enjoy.
Hopefully you can see me, because according to the screen it's almost pitch blackness, because all the lights coming in there due to the time of day, unfortunately. So there we go. Washed flour chicken seitan, and I know I've not had it yet, but I'm about to tell you, this is gorgeous. It's one of my favourite meals, so I better get a knife, because I'm going to do my usual and take far too large a chunk, and then I can't talk to camera, and all you see me is going arm. So, washed flour chicken seitan with some flavoured rice and gorgeous. Right in my wheelhouse, exactly the sort of dish I love. So, go ahead, make it and enjoy. Take care, all the best.